going to have that because we're talking about your favorite movie of 2024, right? This was your favorite?
It was one of my favorites. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's one of my favorites.
Which one was your favorite? Civil War. I think it's what we talked about at the start of the year.
I think it's Civil War. I do. Okay. I do. Like theatrical release.
And you saw Heretic in the movie theater.
I saw it in the movie theater. I saw it twice in the movie theater. And one was with the directors, Beck and Woods, and they were doing a Q&A afterwards.
Huh.
So that was very cool. Learned a whole lot. Also, some thoughts I thought beforehand were incorrect, and they were corrected in that conversation. And then some thoughts that I did think were right, and they were right. And then some they just go, that's on you to decide. So it was super good, though. It was really, really cool experience, and they're an awesome team. Most people probably don't even realize this, but they were behind A Quiet Place.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Was that an A24 film, The Quiet Place, or no?
Nope.
Huh.
Nope.
Interesting.
But yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they were the writers of A Quiet Place. So,
well, that makes me.
talented.
I'm really excited. That's one thing I wanted to hear more about. Like that, I wrote down in my notes. I want to hear about this Q&A with the directors, and
you just rewatched it too, so I'm sure you have some notes as well. But
sorry,
no worries. In lieu of a question this week, I actually had a comment that.
Okay, I will also say, I have a delivery that's coming. So if I just have to disappear for a second,
You're stuck with me.
Don't be afraid. Tyler's great.
Yes.
And I just have to sign my life away, and then I'll be back.
What can I ask what you're getting?
Yeah, it's a new camera. Because I already have 20.
That's awesome.
No, so I'm shooting a series, a 6-episode series in May. And there's a lot of cameras that can do it. Cameras that I currently have can do it. However, as I've gone over it in my head and planning and whatever, there's another camera I think would be probably the best option. And of course, could I just rent it? Sure. But it's so cheap that I already have like 3 potential projects that it will go on and be rented out. So it probably will pay itself off this year. The rest of in the remainder of the year. So
can I ask how much one of those costs?
Yeah, that camera. So I got the Blackmagic Pixis 6K camera. Currently, you're viewing us, if you're viewing us, on the Sony FX6.
Ah, thank you.
But the Blackmagic Pixis camera, what it offers that the FX6 doesn't is an open gate sensor 3:2 aspect ratio and a few different flavors of that for anamorphic shooting. The FX6 is just a 16:9 sensor, so I don't need to get into the math equations of it, but it's not open gate, has limited anamorphic functionality in terms of properly shooting for anamorphic without having to crop in a lot in the image later. You can still shoot anamorphic on it, and it's great. But for this project, the Pixis I think is the best option. And anyway, so I ordered that, but that was the body. So the body is $3,000. Then I needed media, so I bought a terabyte of media for $200. Then a cage for $400, and I bought an adapter that was $600 for a lens mount. But after kind of my research, I think I'm going to return that one and get another one. It's a little bit more expensive, but I think it will be the best option long term because it has the deepest flange depth, which means on the back of lenses, PL mount lenses, there's like a big chunk that will go into the mount, and because it has this this mount adapter has a drop-in filter in the back, it will hit it if it's too long, and then there's no point for it. So there's very few lenses that it won't work on. The one that I bought, and it just so happens that I have those lenses. So it's like, of course I have those lenses, the ones that won't work. So, shit. Anyways, so I'm probably order that. Anyways, it will probably end up being like $4,500-ish to have that thing just ready to go.
That's why I make you sign for it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
Huh.
So, anyways, not to go off on the rant, but yeah, that's what is delivering to my door.
Well, we'll be on standby for that, and it's a good rant. It's a good rant. It goes into the whole point of the podcast of a cinematographer and someone who's not a cinematographer to be like, a lot of that stuff you said went over my head, but I was trying to grasp on, and hopefully as we continue to have these conversations, I can learn exactly what you're talking about
Yeah.
when you talk about cameras.
Think about it like this, also for everyone else. You have a canvas, and you have a painter, and you can paint with any paintbrush. However, certain paintbrushes will have certain strokes to them that you can't get with any other one. So this is very much the same for me. It's like, as a cinematographer, I have my paintbrushes are my cameras, but even more so lenses. So that's just it. Could you paint a picture with anyone? Sure. But I'm sure Vincent van Gogh had a favorite brush, right? Just saying.
Well, speaking of cinematography, I do want to plant a seed here because there's online conversation that the cinematographer for Daredevil Born Again should get mentioned for whatever kind of cinematography awards happen at the end of the year or the start of the year. Just
Really?
Plant the seed, and he won one previously back when it was on Netflix in 2018, 2017. I think it was season 3, 2018 when he got it. So,
Do you know who it is?
I have no idea.
And was that after a recent episode, or did they drop the whole season all at once?
They dropped the first 2 episodes, and then they just dropped. If you're watching this, it'll be a little bit delayed, but they just dropped the 3rd episode, and because of our algorithm on TikTok, we use the hashtag cinematography a lot. We're kind of on like the cinematography video algorithm, and there's a lot of positive talk and then reminiscent talk of Daredevil season 1, 2, and 3. You can find on Disney Plus, and then Daredevil Born Again. Just throwing that out there.
Okay, I see two cinematographers for Born Again. You have Pedro Gomez Milian and Hilary Fife Spera.
Do you know who they are?
I do not. I'm looking at their work. Okay, familiar with some of Hilary's work, but Pedro, like none of Pedro's.
Interesting.
But now I'm really curious.
Yeah, when you start to watch it, because ever since you started to explain to me things of just like visual storytelling, I started to pick up on different things of just movies and TV shows that do it well. And my brother-in-law, he started watching Daredevil again when my grandma died, and so we were there and we watched the first 4 episodes, and I was like, "Oh, Sam would love this scene. Oh, Sam would love this scene. Oh, because it's filmed in New York. It's dark, but there's light. It's strategic places. I'm just like, I bet Sam would like this.
I do like darker stuff for
So
sure.
just gonna plant that seed.
All right, planted.
But that's not my comment. That's not my comment nor my question.
Okay.
So today, in lieu of a question, I was actually gonna do a comment that we probably could have done for a riff, but it's been in my mind, and I just wanted to verbalize it. So on Sunday, I was at the gym, right? And
Tyler at the gym?
First time all year.
No. Shut up.
No.
I was like,
Just
you gotta be shitting me.
No. No, I go every day because I'm depressed. Just kidding. Or was I?
Is he?
It's up for the listeners to decide. It was at the gym. And someone that you and I both know, who's
I think I know who this
yeah,
is.
looking to find some faith this year. She texted me and it was like, "Hey, I'm going to a church in Salt Lake City called Missio Dei Christian Community. Do you want to come with me?" And I was like, "Well, shit, this thing starts in like 20 minutes." And she was like, "Yeah, well, I forgot to text you, so you want to come later? Do you want to come at all?" And I was like, "I'm not ready."
This is who I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was like, "Yeah, I'll come." So I got off the treadmill. And I went to the church in almost exactly how I'm dressed now, except a tank top and shorts. I had the hat on still and sweaty and gross and I go in and no one was cared that late, which I was late or how I was dressed, which is great. I found her, sat next to her, and I was emotional at the moment because I was just sitting with this person. We were just sitting together, listening to this sermon in this beautiful church in downtown Salt Lake. But and this kind of goes into what we're talking about.
I was
today
going to
as
say,
well.
this is actually very interesting after what
Yes.
the show we're
Mhm.
going to talk about.
Yeah, that's what I brought up. I was like, I
Okay.
still got my college shirt on. I'm bringing up this thing of just like, because it was the sermon was about Jesus, right? And they're starting like they're getting ready for Easter thing where they do like a service of speakers or sermons. And he was like, he opened it up really interesting where he was talking about his wife. He was like, if I want to tell you about my wife, I could tell you where she went to school, what color of hair she has, what pisses her off, what her GPA was.
I chuckle at what pisses her off.
Okay,
I don't know why.
Yeah, he would know. But like he's like, so I label these things about this person, right? And so like if I'm trying to describe you to somebody, you specifically, like, well, we met at BYU. He went to Wharton. He's a cinematographer.
Wharton.
Is that not what your college is called?
Uh-uh.
What's it called?
Chapman.
Chapman. Why did I say Wharton? Chapman.
No clue.
Chapman University. My bad. The Owls?
No.
No mascot at all.
Panthers.
Panthers. The Chapman Panthers.
Pretty sure. If it's not, sorry.
We'll get back to you. But he was talking about these different things, and he was like, Jesus was 33 years old. He was from Palestine, but he was like, do you really know that person? After I described this, like, do you know them now? Do you know my wife better? Do you know Sam better based on what I just described about him? And he was like, you don't. How do you really get to know somebody? Through story. So he was like, today we're going to talk about how Jesus was tempted by the devil 3 times in the wilderness. As part of the first story we're going to tell. So you can get to know him better, because you can know facts about him, you can know all these different things like what he says, but until you hear stories about somebody, you don't really know who they are. And I was so just struck by that. I was so impacted by that because I was sitting in this church with this person, and like someday we'll have this person on the podcast, and you'll know the story that went into like leading up to this moment where I was so emotionally impacted sitting in this church, because it's a story. And knowing that story, you know me better and you know her better. For Sam, I was like, okay, he went to Chapman. He has long red hair, but like that doesn't really tell about you. I was like, well, if I could describe Sam to somebody, in the future I'm going to do this, because I did the same way to somebody else. Where I was like, oh, this is Sam. He went to film school. He's a cinematographer. I was like, that's part of it, but that's not you. It's like, let me tell you about the time that we were at this church event in Rexburg. It was so dull that Sam had to get up on a table and almost got kicked out of bowling to give some kind of life in this. And like for me, as a bystander of this, I was like, that kid is cool. I want to be his friend. I want to see if I can level up my humanity so that Sam will be my friend. So I was like, that was badass. And it was funny. There was when I turned 30, Sam took me out to dinner and he had a video call with one of the survivors in my foundation. And before I got home, he had Venmo'd me $500 to buy this little girl a bed. You remember that?
Yeah.
I remember that very clearly. I was like, these are the stories that make Sam Sam. Like the Sam that graduated from Rexburg and wanted to pursue a dream of creating positive stories. And so he went out and got a student loan, moved to a different state, and like went deep into that world for 2 years, 3 years?
3. Well, it was 3 years, but I was there for 5.
5 years. Okay, 5 years. To relentlessly pursue your dreams. And I was like, that is Sam. Like describing those 3 stories, that says so much more about you than like Chapman, Rexburg, long red hair, likes movies, cinematographer. Like, yeah, that makes that part of who you are. But the stories that we experience together, that is like the sermon got me so hard because I started to think about different stories you have with people, and this specifically of just this podcast. You know, getting to the end of my sermon here is by the time this comes out, you know, we control, you know, the release schedule, but it could be this week or it could be sometime in June. And like these stories that we discuss, like the Arcane and Logan, and even the ones that aren't so good, like Captain America, the ones we have coming up, like, you know, we got a whole month dedicated to The Last of Us. We're probably going to give you guys 10 hours of at least of Last of Us content. And in that moment with her specifically, and then here in this moment with you, of this being a part of our story and dissecting the stories that make you and I who we are, relating to stories we see on the screen, to stories we hear, to stories we experience. And I don't know, man. I just think, and that's my sermon today. Is just the stories that we share about other people is what really communicates who they are.
Dude, I 100% agree with you on that. And I mean, one, to kind of piggyback on that, like in terms of like, how do you know Jesus, right? Growing up in a very, very Christian community and world, and reading the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the other texts from the LDS. I don't know why I just lisped, but there you go. The LDS faith, which I guess I don't necessarily practice anymore. But I was thinking, and today actually during a walk, I was like, if there's one thing I am grateful for, and there's a lot of good things that I still feel about the LDS church. There's also things that I don't like. But I said, if I were to boil it down, what's the one thing that I feel that I have most benefited from in that regard is that I know that there is a higher power. And I said this out loud as I was walking. I was like, I don't necessarily understand it. I don't necessarily comprehend it. And God knows that I complain a lot about it. But yet, I still know that there's something there, and that thing is aware of me and cares for me. And for the longest time, it was this relationship and idea of God, Heavenly Father, and then Jesus Christ. And I always have the hardest time separating those two. And speaking back to like, how do you know Jesus? Is it because he was born in a stable and, you know, whatever? Just the simple statements from, or the stories and the behaviors, you know. And when I watched The Chosen for the first time, season 1, and Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus Christ, that for me was the first time like the idea of Jesus Christ physically actually made sense to me. And I really felt like almost like born again. Like when you hear, and I'm sure you experienced this on your mission, you know, a lot of born again Christians were just so adamant, ruthless, right? Ruthless. But I just remember feeling like, because of this experience and seeing this and this portrayal and going, I believe this. I felt like born again. I didn't finish the later seasons, so I don't know where they're at. I only watched season 1. But that experience, but it was the stories. The whole reason I'm going into this thing is the stories. Like, it was the stories of Jesus that made him and makes him that relationship, you know. And even on my walk today, I was like I said, I was like, I don't understand it. I don't comprehend it. I'm confused by it. And again, God knows I'm not very good at following it, and I complain a lot, but I still know that there's something there, and I can't argue that fact for me personally. And it's through those experiences. So like that knowledge has been like probably the greatest thing that I got out of my experience with the LDS faith. And I guess in that regard, like prayer, in that I can commune with this higher power, even if I'm not like necessarily hearing words back, right? And sometimes there's periods where it's just silence and I'm just feeling nothing, hearing nothing, except I'm left to myself. And sometimes, like when it's been the quietest and the most silence has actually been when God has spoken the loudest, I think, for me. Not realizing it at the time, but after the fact. So, yeah, man, stories is what make us, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, if I'm like, okay, well, what makes Tyler Tyler? I'm like, well, I don't say like Star Set or the gym or Jeep or Bronco, right? I'm like, no, Tyler is the guy who hops in his car for 13 hours to go and get this family cross passage into another country. Just drops and goes. Right? And like the countless stories that I have heard from you about doing this. And also doing what you were doing with the previous organization for so long and for so little money.
Yeah, 26 grand a year.
Like, it's asinine.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's asinine that you have someone like you, and I'm not, this is going to steer away about it, but it also kind of goes to show maybe some true colors. But you have like an organization that is doing good. I would probably say for the most part, most of the people in there were doing things for the betterment of mankind.
Yeah.
And then there was a few really fucking rotten pieces of shit.
Yeah.
But you're going to country and in the thick of it, getting threats, blah, 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 for $26,000 a year. And then when someone else is getting $250,000 a year for the same thing, but sitting back in an office.
Yeah.
Like, fuck that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that shows like
Help
you're in it for just doing, like, that's your heart, man. Like, you're not doing that for a paycheck. You're doing it to the betterment of humankind, because you care about people. So
you did give me some movie tickets though, that $26,000.
Say that again.
I got some movie tickets out of that though. Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that, and I just when we have this girl on, because she's gonna come on before she moves. Just the
Which one?
Yeah. Just just like our story that led up to this moment. I don't know, just thankful for stories in general. That like I could listen to a story about Jesus, that I could think about like my co-host and like the stories that make him who he is and that led us to this moment. And because this podcast even happened, I know we're going long like in the intro, but like this podcast happened when you
It's
were
our podcast.
Yeah, you can skip ahead if you want.
I'm not doing this for you. but I love you.
This podcast happened when you were kind of in a bad place. And I think I was in a bad place too. I mean, I had threats. You were going through what you were going through.
Yeah.
It's your story to share if you want to share. But, we had some stuff going on. We're like, why don't we need to start a podcast?
Yeah.
And like, I got to tell you, today even like, I was looking forward to this podcast because we watched this movie. If it's a movie that you really invested in,
Yeah.
your time, your knowledge to understand more about it. I did the same, just later, and not to the extent that you did. And I was like, I really just can't wait to come back with my buddy and just discuss another story.
Well, that reminded me of some material for this that I'd totally forgotten about that I'm going to see if I still have.
Good.
Because I'm also very excited to talk about this.
Yeah, do you want to go right into it?
Yeah.
I'll give you a synopsis. One thing I've learned, thank you guys for being patient, is sometimes we go right into our stories, and the feedback that I got, remember my family was like, I never saw Arcane. I have no concept of what you were talking about. Or I have not seen Mickey 17.
Yeah.
You got to give me some kind of synopsis.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, before we do this now, we'll give you a
I
synopsis.
thought the same thing.
I was listening to it. We went right into Arcane, like Jinx and season 2, whatever. So the synopsis, and we'll keep it short and simple because if you're going to listen to this podcast, you're probably going to go see the movie. But the synopsis of this film is 2 missionaries, female missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints, do their thing, knocking on doors, and they knock on the door of a guy who puts them through a religious test, I guess. Like, is that the way to describe this? And
Yeah, a crucible of doubt.
yeah, it's a crucible of doubt. Like, their lives are at stake, their faiths are at stake, and the whole movie kind of takes place in this guy's home. And you watched it when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it later because we talked about it so much. And I found on this podcast, if you push on the podcast the right buttons enough, you mention something like 3 times, and the other person hasn't seen it, it's like, okay,
That's what we're doing next.
okay, that's what we'll do next. So Heretic it is. You want to start? You want to?
Yeah. So why don't we just let me give you a little bit of background here. So it premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, September 8th, 2024, which is almost where Sweet Molly premiered. Because Tiff reached out to us and then decided no.
This year, maybe? Can it premiere this year?
No. Anyways, it's not about Sweet Molly.
Yeah, Miseria, though.
Miseria, yeah. Maybe Tiff next year.
Stay tuned, Tiff.
But then it was released on November 8 in theaters, 2004. The film garnered generally positive reviews, particular praise for Hugh Grant's portrayal of Mr. Reed, the antagonist, and which I totally agree with this. Critics highlighted his ability to balance charm and menace,
Definitely.
which I thought absolutely, which offered a fresh take on his normal acting career. I mean, predominantly, especially with the romance stuff that he did. But it's directed by Beck and Woods, known for their work on A Quiet Place, and the film explores the intersection of religion and horror, prompting viewers to reflect on faith, control, and personal belief systems. The director's approach combines psychological tension with traditional horror elements, creating a narrative that is both thought-provoking and unsettling. And again, just a plot overview, the narrative centers on 2 young Mormon missionaries, Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, played by Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, who visit a home of Mr. Reed, Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant.
I got the G and Grant
Mr. Green.
mixed up. A seemingly affable man. As their conversation unfolds, Reed's demeanor shifts, revealing sinister intentions. The missionaries find themselves trapped at his house, subjected to psychological torment that challenges their beliefs and tests their resilience. And I will also say, right before I went to this the first time, I was working on a script and I was doing a lot of research in writing this script. And one thing I was like, you know, what is really good storytelling is a good game of cat and mouse. And then I went and saw Heretic, and I was like, this is a good game of cat and mouse. So I really think like that's a huge part in great storytelling of just this game of cat and mouse and this bit of an underdog uh, with a unsurmountable villain that seems unstoppable and craves to get what it wants. And anyways, this film is very much like that. I remember when I saw the trailer for the first time, I was very excited about it. Probably because I had roots in the LDS faith. But I was just like, an A24 film. Okay, where are we going with this? So, and I was a big fan of Beck and Woods, like their work. So I was very excited about it. It seemed in the trailer, I was like, this seems like a very honest and interesting take on like a public appearance of Mormon missionaries, which was hard to truly know because it was just a trailer. But I would say it's a very good, accurate, like portrayal of Mormon missionaries, and I say that being one, and I say that watching Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton and going, oh, that was that sister in my mission. That was that sister in my mission. Oh, you know what? Actually, there's 3 or 4 that were just like her, and 3 or 4 that were just like her, and there's that elder. There was 4 or 5 elders that were just like that elder, and I was like, this is really good portrayal of Mormon missionaries in this game of cat and mouse. So that's the plot. That's the punchline. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I would just to start out my thoughts. 100% in agreement with how the missionaries were portrayed. 100%. Like this is. I actually have 2 things to say right as we get started. I'm talking to you. This is not an anti-Mormon film. What I had heard going in just from like the online chatter of like, don't go see Heretic, boycott Heretic. It's anti-Mormon. It's anti-LDS. That I watched the movie as being an active member of the church. I did not get an anti-LDS vibe at all. At all. Like the bad guy in here, he is anti-religion. He's obsessed with the one true church or the one true faith, and he is clearly the villain. Like there is no ambiguity there at all. He is the bad guy. He is an asshole, and he is sadistic. And the sister missionaries are the good guys. You are with them from the very beginning. You're with them to the very end. They are the good guys. There's no anti-Mormon rhetoric at all. It's just the Mormon religion is the vessel that they use to tell this story, which is a very thought-provoking story on religion as a whole. I would say that the 2 sister missionaries are better portrayed than any missionary in any kind of media, and that includes church-produced media. The missionaries in the church-produced media, God bless you, they are not human. They are perfect little robots that never wake up past 6:30, never ask their companion if they've had sex before, none of that stuff. Like the conversation that these 2 had at the start of the film.
At least portrayed to us.
These 2, like the opening conversation, I remember having those conversations with my companions where it's like, have you, those legit questions that like you ask when you're living with somebody. And the different levels of Mormonism. Like you get one that's just very much like, I don't understand it all, but I'm here. I know it's true. I'm going to go forward with faith. I'm going to do my thing. And there's one who maybe is more doubtful, but very thoughtful. That's thinking through things not blindly at all. Just really thinking through things, has doubts, has confirmations, and is going forward with faith, hoping that her doubts will be answered. And they're just you're with them from the very start. And I really enjoyed how specifically those 2 missionaries, Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes were portrayed. There was nothing anti-Mormon about this film, and those missionaries were the best portrayal of real human Mormon missionaries in any type of media, including media produced by the church.
Yeah, I agree. And living in Utah, predominantly Mormons here, it was very disheartening for me to see that Heretic was not being played at the Larry H. Miller Megaplex theaters. I don't know who made that decision or why that decision was made, but it was absolutely ridiculous. And after having watched the movie, just answers the question that Hugh Grant puts about control. Control.
Control. That's his point.
That's his whole point. Is like religion controls what you see and what you don't see. It controls your life, what you feel, don't feel, what you shouldn't do. It's all about controlling you as an individual. And then here we have a chain, the biggest chain,
which we actively support too. We go to your movies very frequently in your theaters.
And a fairly large system of movie theaters that is censoring this film from the Utah inhabitants who are Mormons, who I think would benefit immensely. Whether everyone in Utah is Mormon, you're either active, non-active, or Jack Mormon. I guess maybe there's 4 because like I'm not necessarily any of those.
Yeah, you got to understand, just like these same people, like we talk about this all the time. Terrifier 1, 2, 3 is much more anti-faith than this movie. Like if you're going to show that, which is essentially torture porn in a megaplex theater, any kind of theater, but not show Heretic, it goes to show me you didn't take the time to actually watch it, consume it, and think for yourself. You just read something online from some kind of blog or somewhere, and you're like, okay, we can't show that because we can continue to show the Terrifier and know that these people that maybe are boycotting Heretic are probably still streaming Game of Thrones in their household. Like, what is the issue here?
It's ridiculous and hypocritical.
Exactly, and it's not an anti-Mormon film. You have to watch it. It is the villain is clearly the villain. You're with the missionaries; they're the good guys, and you could put any religion in this as a vessel to tell this story, and it would have worked. It just happened and you came to my house because I was trying not to share thoughts, but I couldn't help it. And he showed up at my house, and you said something that had me thinking of just the vessel you choose to tell this film and why they chose Mormonism, because it's a new religion, right?
Correct.
That's what they said?
Yes. So to give a little backstory on that, in the question and the Q&A with Beck and Woods after the film, they talked about the making of the film, why they did it, blah, 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 blah. One of the things they talked about was, okay, well, which religion do you pick? And they said, well, the LDS faith is the most current, it's the largest growing and contemporary religion that exists right now. It was also founded in the 1800s, so 200 years ago, so extremely recent comparative to when Christ walked the earth, if you're going to judge it by that time, right? 200 years, American made, so it's researchable, it's recent, and it's right in your backyard. You don't have to go to Israel. You don't have to go to Rome. You don't have to go anywhere. It's like, it is the most accessible church that is newer, that can be researched and be used as a channel to start this conversation of religion, which is the whole point of the film from the director's point of view, was we are just having a conversation about religion. They said they were like, we're 41 or 42 now. Sorry if I get your ages wrong, boys. But they're like, we've been friends since we were 15 or 16, and we've been debating this since we were 15 or 16. And they're from Iowa, I'm pretty sure, and that's where they live now. And they've been debating this idea of religion and having these conversations since they were 16, right? At least, maybe even sooner. So that's the whole basis of conversations. But Mormonism was the most accessible, the most recent, the most new, and an American-made religion that's in your backyard that was a great option to explore this conversation in.
Yeah. And like, I really enjoyed a Hulu show that came out a few years ago called Under the Banner of Heaven. It was really well made. However, that was much more like an anti-LDS church message than Heretic. Like, they weren't even discreet about it. It was still good. You should probably still check it out. But this was not that way. The bad guy's a bad guy. He's no anti-hero. He's bad. And he reminds me a lot of like the stories in the Book of Mormon, like Korihor, the Antichrist. I mean, they're almost the same person. Like, I would not be surprised if it came out, a year later. It's like, yeah, we read the Book of Mormon. We're like, let's make the villain kind of like this Korihor person, this Antichrist. He's trying to persuade people from not giving their faith. Like, the story of Heretic, albeit a different version of it, is kind of entwined like in the Book of Mormon. And so, like, if you haven't seen it yet, I mean, you can stream it, you can buy it, like you did. You can stream on HBO Max because it is I did not get the vibe of an anti-Mormon film. And some of the feedback I saw online was like, well, they show garments in it. Garments being the sacred underwear for members of the church. But the way they show it in this movie, it propels the story forward, and it makes you sympathize with these missionaries. And I listened to this really good podcast. Let me give them a shout out. It's called Hive Mind. It was produced here in Salt Lake City. That scene goes to show the audience that maybe has never been on a mission just how vulnerable it is to be a missionary, especially when you're female. I mean, I was a 19-year-old kid stranded in the Dominican Republic. You were a 19-year-old kid stranded in Minnesota, and
yeah, you betcha.
What?
I said, yeah, you betcha.
Is that a Minnesota joke?
Yeah, what about it?
I know what you're saying. You're vulnerable. Like, you and I could go back and forth on mission stories of like situations where you felt potentially like in danger. You get antagonized a lot, especially like when we talked about like born again Christians. Like, man, those people were cruel to me in my mission. I can't tell you how many times I had a Christian right in my face yelling at me to repent. I'm just like, bro, get away from me. Like, you're in my bubble. You're pissing me off. I'm this close to decking you in the face.
Yeah. Not to interrupt. It was the easiest rebuttal to that.
What?
It would be like, okay, so let me get this straight. And this is with respect.
With respect.
Right?
All due respect.
It's like, let me get this straight. You're telling me that all I need to do is cry out, Lord Jesus is my Savior. I want to be born again. And then I'm good. And they're like, yep, you don't need to do any what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. And I said, Lord Jesus, I accept you as my Savior.
They leave you alone then?
Yep.
Huh.
Because then they can't argue with you.
Like, you just did in front of them.
You just did in front of them.
Huh.
And you're like, great, I'm going to go keep telling people about Jesus.
And your response is way more Christ-like.
What are you going to do? Say that, no, you can't do that. But you're the one that just told me that I could.
So, yeah, you're not sincere enough. Did they ever tell you that?
No.
Okay.
Well, probably. Anyways.
But you're vulnerable, right? And you get people in your face, people you're teasing you do all these different things. Like, I had watched 2 or 3 machete fights in my mission where I was just like, we got to get the heck out of here. Like, I don't want to get caught with these machetes. And the part of the garment scene is to show just how vulnerable these people are. Like what they did in the movie was misogynistic for one, and it was incredibly it was a form of bigotry against Mormons, because like they did that with intention, and you sympathize with them. You see how upset the sister missionary is after that, and you're just like, oh, poor kid, like this 21-year-old, 19-year-old kid. And you're with them even more so when they go into this house. And compared to the way that those garments are portrayed, like on TikTok or in other media, where it's extremely disrespectful, it's extremely bigoted, this medium, at least it's being shown in a way where you are, you're finding your empathy for these sisters. I didn't love that they were shown either, obviously, because in the faith, like, those are incredibly sacred, they're incredibly personal. But if you're going to show them, at least show them in a way where you're like, God, I can't believe they did that to you. I'm with you. Like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And you start out this story on their side even more so. And so it was portrayed in a way that it wasn't derogatory. It wasn't demeaning. It was to create empathy for the main characters. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it like that.
Yeah. Now, thinking of this as a visual storyteller and a filmmaker, right? When you're making movies and you're doing visual storytelling, you have to take physical objects and use them to stand in place of an idea. to continue the story forward, right?
Yeah.
Again, we've talked about this a little bit, but I mean, take love. How do you photograph love? Well, what is love? What is the depths of love? What does love look like to many different people? And that is very different. So then how do you photograph love, right? So it's a very, very complicated thing to try and figure out to do, but it also can be very simple. So how do you convey something that is so intimate to an individual that they care about, it means something to them, and it's deeply, deeply a part of them? Well, what underwear are they wearing, right? People don't walk around and, well, I mean, today's a little different. But for the most part, people don't walk around in underwear.
Yeah.
And people probably have their favorite pairs of underwear and would be embarrassed if anybody knew what underwear they were wearing, right? So underwear in general is a very great object to go, I'm going to represent something that is very personal to someone. Well, in the LDS faith, the garment is something that is very personal to each member who wears the garment, right? So that is a great example of visual storytelling in choosing an object that stands in place of an idea to convey to everyone that same idea, and that this is something very personal. It's something that's delicate, it's intimate, it's hard to talk about, which represents another idea. The garment in this film represents religion, right? Which is a hard thing to have a conversation about. People, it's a very personal thing. People are very polarized about it. They're very confused about it. Some people think they have every answer as if they're God themselves. It's an incredibly challenging conversation to have, or can be. Doesn't need to be necessarily, but it is. So that represents, we're going to talk about something really hard today in our movie, and that's our own personal, intimate feelings behind religion. Another great, storytelling to start this movie out, going back to that first conversation with Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton on the bench. A lot of times, not all the time, and not every great filmmaker does this, but oftentimes from great filmmakers with really great films, the very first frame or the very first thing you see or the very first scene you see will tell you the entire story of the film ahead of you. And I think they did that exceptionally well here with that opening scene of Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes having this conversation on this bench about pornographies, right? Something she can't even say out loud, right? What's also interesting is it starts on a close-up, and it's like, okay, we're going to look at something very closely, but we're going to slowly back out wide so you get to see a whole picture of what's going on here. And it's going to look different, and it's going to reveal more information the wider you get, right? And that's exactly what they did for the whole film and this conversation of religion. Like, we're going to go straight in to the heart of it, but we're going to step out, and we're going to widen out, and we're going to see this from a huge lens here. And this whole back and forth conversation between the two of, well, having this awkward conversation about sex and pornography, and that's a really awkward conversation for members of the church and also young people. And this is my opinion. I think some of the sexual dysfunction that happens inside the church and in relationships and marriages is because of this unrealistic viewpoint on sex and being open and having conversations about it, right? Because those are very personal and intimate feelings from multiple parties. You can't have one person that just goes, this is what sex looks like, and the other person goes along with it. It's not going to be a good experience if they view it differently, right? So you got to be able to talk about it. But I don't know about your experience, but my experience was we don't talk about that. It's just, we're not having that conversation, right?
It's dirty talk.
It's dirty talk. It's filthy talk. It's of the devil, right? And I think that has damaged more relationships inside the LDS faith than probably anything, because there's just this unrealistic expectation of, it's like it's made out to be so much more than what it is. It's like, it's just sex. Don't make it any more than it is. Don't make it any less than it is. It's just sex.
I'll piggyback one thought too. I think that bleeds down to the youth as well, to where
Especially the youth.
especially youth, where I've seen, let's say, a 14-year-old boy is sexually abused by someone, and he can't even say what happened to him because he's been taught that
Conditioned.
that all those words, all those actions, for one, are taboo. So you really can't talk about it. And that allows his perpetrator to ensure that he'll stay silent. For one, he doesn't have the right words to even describe what happened because it's been tabooed his whole life. And two, he feels culpable. He feels culpable because, like, these feelings that I had, this reaction my body had, it was dirty, it was wrong. I'm at fault for what happened. And that's just not right. And because you make a topic like this so taboo that you can't talk about it. So I'm glad they...
Yeah.
And so, like, this conversation, like these two sister marriages had, you could feel the awkwardness around it, but I really applaud both of them for, like, engaging in that conversation where it's like, okay, do you watch porn? You know, it's real conversations that are happening with youth, not just in, like, in the LDS church. I'm assuming in all sects of religion where it's very, very conservative.
Yeah.
These conversations are happening. You can't get away from it. They're happening. You can either be a part of the conversation, or you can allow the conversation to go wherever it's going to go, and you never know where they'll end up. So be a part of it.
You can lead it, or you can clean up the aftermath. It's up to you.
Exactly.
And again, right? And then these two sisters, they have very different experiences with this idea of sex and pornography. Very different experiences. We learn that Sister Barnes has
Birth control.
Mm-hmm. Right? So there's obviously something about that there. Sister Paxton, she probably had no clue what in the world that thing even was, or what it was for, and why would that even exist.
It's funny because when I saw that, I knew exactly what it was.
Yeah,
exactly what it was, because in Colombia, where a lot of our foundation is based, the Colombian government, like 20 years ago, had so many teenage moms on their hands. They were like, our social services resources are being drained here because it's just 14-year-old has a kid, 13-year-old has a kid, 16-year-old has a kid. Condoms are expensive, and people are going to do what they're going to do. And so what the Colombian government did is when someone hits the age of puberty, there's an option to where the Colombian government will fund one of those contraceptives in your arm to prevent teenage mothers. And so, like, out of all the countries that Libertas works in, Colombia is where we have the least teenage mothers because of that reason. And so when that scene showed, and they showed the scar, I was like, I know exactly what that is. I know exactly what that is. A lot of it's for birth control, but some of it's just to regulate the periods that they have. Which I'm like, you know what? Good for you. Like, good for you if, like, you know what? I would... This missionary, is it Sister Paxton?
Sister
Barnes. I really enjoyed her character a lot because you can tell that she's a member of the church who is brilliant, flawed. She accepts it, and she's doing the best she can to make a difference in the world. And I was like, she is the voice of so many people that I know that have this standard. They're not quite living up, but they want to get there and looking to do good the whole way.
Yeah. So kind of circling that whole point, and again, conversation about a good filmmaker will tell you the story right off the bat, is this conversation between these two. We're going to talk about something hard. We're going to look very closely at it. We're going to look very widely at it. And everyone's going to come out having their own opinion either way. But it's going to be awkward. It's going to be hard to get through. But if you keep going, eventually you'll come to your own conclusion. And so that to me was just like, this is good shit, right? And that told me everything that was going to happen right off the bat. Also say one thing that was really cool learning about this and why they did feel so authentic as sister missionaries is because they grew up as members of the church.
The directors or the actresses?
The actresses.
Huh.
And the directors talked about that during the casting process, that they had all of these auditions and they were narrowing down, and they kept going back to these two sisters. And they're just like, there's just something about them. And then the casting director was like, this was like the final round before casting. They're like, well, just so you know, like they used to be members of this faith. So they know a lot about it. And they're like, well, that's why this feels so authentic. That's why there's something about them that nobody else has, is because they know this world, right? Yeah. And I don't know their current feelings about the church or not, but I know that they said that they had family members and friends that were still a part of the religion. One of the sisters had a sister that was out on a mission at the time, and she wanted to do her very best to represent it well, and that's admirable. Because whether they like the church now or not, they did a great representation of what it actually is, and in my mind was very respectful and delicate in that regard.
I liked how they use sisters too. So many media portrayals portray them as like the elder missionaries because of like the white shirts and the tags, and I feel like using sister missionaries, like for the people that were not wanting to go see it, made them nervous of like, oh no, it's sisters. Like I just can't emotionally watch the movie. Is your package here?
No, it's not.
Still not here.
Still not here.
So I like that decision that they did the sisters, because I feel like it, for one, I think it more accurately represents like that population. Because I still remember when they changed the age to make it so sisters can go at 19 versus 21, and just, I mean, everybody I knew, there was like, I'm going, because for a long time it wasn't fair that like the boys could go when they were 8 or 19, and the sisters had to go to college, get halfway through the degree, and then take 2 years off to go. And so I'm glad it was like, no, I want to go right out of high school and do my thing and do my service. And my sister, she was kind of like on the fringe, where she wanted to go on a mission, but she was 19, had to wait 2 more years, and when they changed the age, she was like, I'm going right now. And for her, like she had a great experience. She went to a place that's really close to her heart. And so I'm glad they use sisters. For one, it accurately represents the population. But 2, this is a horror movie. This is a suspense thriller. And a psychological thriller. 2 elder missionaries against an old man. That old man stands no chance physically. But 2 sisters, it makes it a lot more believable what's about to happen. So I'm glad they used it, because in the end, I did find this on HBO Max under the suspense horror genre where it was listed.
Yep, and it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And it is horrifying. There's lots of horror in it, and so don't go in thinking it's anything less.
Ooh. Did you get it?
Oh no.
I read an article that was talking about how it was worried it would spawn copycats and encourage people not to go see it. I don't think that's a legit fear at all. I think just the rules in place protect those sisters pretty well. Obviously, it's probably not perfect. There's probably experiences that people have had that I don't know about, but I say the rules in place protect them pretty well. They're out in public all the time. People know them. They have to be in communication with people all the time. And I feel like it was another tactic that someone who didn't see the movie, because it's very hard to predict society. I remember when Joker came out. We talked about this in my house. Joker came out, the first Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. People were so concerned it was going to spurn copycats, that people were going to dress up as Joker and just kill people. And what it spurned was that those stairs that the Joker danced on received like 4 million visitors in a weekend. People wanted to go viral on those stairs, to get on the algorithm, to do their little dance on the stairs. That is what society reacted to when they saw that movie. That was the Joker character, and wanting to mimic him, it was to dance on the stairs that he danced on. Society is very hard to predict. If you're going to take that logic of like, I'm worried about copycats and they're going to kidnap sister missionaries, why aren't we using the same logic and reasoning for movies like Hannibal? Like, we can't produce movies like Hannibal because it puts female FBI agents at risk when they're dealing with cannibals. You can't put it out there. You can't, because it will create more cannibals. Why not use that same logic? Because of that, I don't think that's a real concern. I think that was another excuse to be like, don't go see it because it's potentially anti-Mormon, because they're portraying sister missionaries as the one that fall into this trap. But I don't think copycats is a real concern of people that consume this movie. Obviously not, because we haven't seen anything about that in the news, and it's been 6 months.
Yeah, not absolutely not on a general and a wide scale viewpoint. There might be some psycho out there, one, that gets an idea for this. But again, like you said, you cannot predict that. And
And not enough people are going to see this movie to produce that kind of societal reaction. Like, this movie was produced on what, $10 million budget and brought in $60 million? Maybe?
Sub 10.
Sub 10, more than 60. 58. You told me my house, right? 58 million?
Yeah, 58 million. Box office.
Box office.
Yeah.
Not enough people are going to see this movie to spur like a mass movement of sister missionaries getting kidnapped.
Yeah. So rest be assured, the likelihood of this happening because of this is just very, 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 very little. And also, like, the rule books that they talk about in the movie about we can't be in a house with a male all by ourselves, there's a reason that was in the rule book in the first place. So who knows, maybe something happened, or to what degree or scale, I don't know. But it's been in that rule book for a very long time, and it is to protect them for such instances. And did these sisters break the rules? I mean, they did.
They did.
Like, were they manipulated and misled? Absolutely. But still, like, you know, I'm sure now there's going to be in the rule book, until you see another person. Someone can't just tell you that I have my wife in the background. Gosh, this thing keeps the ring. People, sorry, I'm waiting for my package. I have a Ring doorbell, and then I get these notifications from people instead of my own Ring. You hear that boom? Like, it's ridiculous. It's constant. Anyways, it's one of those stupid things. So get out of here. Anyways,
Hugh Grant. I thought he was awesome.
So good.
He was so good in this role. And I'm gonna go into a little bit of it, because we've been talking a lot about the good stuff about this film. I do want to talk a little bit of the stuff that I had an issue with, and I told you this already, but I'm gonna tell you again. I thought the best scene in that whole movie was the door of beliefs. I thought the scene was brilliant, because obviously he's the bad guy. He's keeping these two sister missionaries hostage. He's not letting them leave. He's explaining to them how religion works using Monopoly, and there's two doors essentially to the same place: belief and disbelief. So, like, if you believe that there's a God in heaven who demands your worship 24/7, or he gets upset and that he hates gay people even though he made them this way, you choose this door. Or you choose the door of disbelief, equally terrifying, that we're just a bunch of horny animals speeding through space on this rock that could end at any instant, and there's no purpose except for how much we can reproduce and consume on this planet. Pick your door. I was like, oh my gosh, like, this guy, like, he's making sense. Like, and I'm saying this like someone who is a believer, he's expressing verbally some doubts that I think every believer has in their system, right? And obviously he's still the bad guy because he's keeping these two sisters hostage, but you're like, he's like the bad guy, like in Killmonger from Black Panther, where he's explaining racism to you, and you're like, he's got some good points, even though you know he's a bad guy. And then when he takes him into the basement, and there's the Oracle and the pie, and you find out he's holding more women captive. For me, that's where I was like, nah. Any kind of logic that he was using now, out the window. I don't care if these sisters came in and they believed in multiple husbands, if they believed they were going to be reincarnated as a frog or a butterfly or whatever. I don't care what they believe. I'm with them because the what he believes and the fruit that it's producing, holding women hostage in some kind of basement, I don't care. Any kind of philosophical reasoning that he was trying to preach on to me, the viewer, is lost because of that scene with the oracles, the prophets in the basement. That's where I kind of like, I felt, for me, I lost, not interest in the movie, because the movie was still good.
Yeah.
I was still there. But as far as like me trying to understand the villain, I was like, nope, bad guy, holding women hostage, don't care what he believes, what he thinks. It's obviously producing slaves in his basement. I'm with them. Don't care what they say, what they believe, what they do. I'm on their side.
What if I play the devil's advocate a little bit?
I hope you do. That's what I
in
hope
that
you do.
regard. So the idea that he's bringing across, right, is an oracle, a prophet has come along and has shown a miracle, right? And if this miracle is true, then all of these other things are true and all of these other things are false, right? Well, let's take Joseph Smith. Comes along, I saw God and Jesus Christ, told me none of these churches were true. So everyone else in the world, your longtime religion, Catholicism, right? You got good intentions, but you're wrong. I have the truth. I saw it when I was 14. I'm starting a church. I have these gold plates. And as I'm growing, there's a 14-year-old girl who now is going to be my wife. Now, to someone watching that from the outset, what does that look like? Fuck that. I'm on that girl's side. I'm on that 14-year-old. She should not be marrying that guy. She should not be having sex with that guy. What the fuck is that? Right? And I'm not saying I'm on one side or the other. I'm just going, well, here's a very similar scenario in the sense of a prophet has come along. It is showing a miracle, and it's going to prove everything you thought wrong or right to now this new viewpoint because this miracle exists. So are you going to come along to my journey or not? Right? So I totally see the viewpoint of like, from a rational standpoint of view, as a human being, I'm also like, this guy's crazy.
Mm-hmm. He's insufferable.
Like, there is nothing okay about this experiment, right? And that's how I'm viewing it as. This is an experiment. That bitch isn't an oracle. That bitch isn't a prophet. He's not some dude who has all the answers. Fuck that. I'm out. I'm going to go and I'm going to fight with these sisters. But what if it was an oracle? What if it was a prophet? What if the miracle did exist? And simply because of my own ignorance and not willingness to believe in the miracle, that now I just missed out on the truth. Anyways, I think it's a great question to pose.
I think, no, and I hear what you're saying.
And that's why, like, his comment in the conversation about Joseph specifically, like when he's having like the normal kind of missionary interaction, I thought was a very interesting question to pose to them, like in that moment where it's like, well, have you ever considered this point of view? Because I hear those point of views all the time, and I have questions about those point of view too. It's I get where he was trying to come from, and I'm gonna try to choose my words very carefully here. So I'm trying to have my thoughts. In that scene with the doors, I understood that he was the villain. I'm like, this guy is an asshole. He's an arrogant atheist. I'm glad she called him out on the guy having a bird head. But I kind of want to see what his end point here is. And that's probably on me. I didn't understand like the purpose of the film. Was like, is this a horror movie? Is this a suspense movie? Is this like, look at this lesson I taught you movie? because I wanted to see where it went when they went into the basement, and then when the basement happened and the Oracle showed up and she was gruesome. Obviously, she was kept there against her will. It's how it was portrayed to me. Someone on the outside, which I totally get where you're coming from when you talk about like just using those examples and stuff. But someone that was just watching it as just a movie, I was like, I don't care what he's trying to say now. I don't care. I mean, that's the whole point of like the whole movie. Is like at this point, his actions and the fruits it's producing. I'm like, I don't care. You could tell me she's a prophet. I don't care because you're holding these women hostage. I don't care what you have to say. I don't care what you're trying to on the journey you're trying to take these girls on. I don't care what you're trying to teach them. You are an asshole. You're portraying an asshole really well.
A heretic.
You're a heretic, and I want nothing to do with you. So maybe that's the whole point you're trying to say. But for me, as someone that was watching the movie, wanting to kind of see, like, these are good conversations to have. Like the conversation, and forgive me if members of my bishop break, if you're listening to this, like the capitalization of the church, right? That's a good conversation to have, I think. There's a quote that's often quoted in like TikTok circles of like, there's a quote from the prophets that says, when the church has enough money, you'll stop paying tithing. There'll be no more 10%. I'm like, well, what point is that going to be, man? What point is that going to be? I think we're there, I would think, based on the current, the
billions and billions and billions and billions
and keep going. You're missing a few
billions.
billions.
And these billions are making its own billions and
Every single
billions
day.
and billions.
Every time that market stops, it's like, a couple new zeros on our account, right?
I will say this: you have enough money.
We got enough money, and then but like that conversation aside, like and it's not just the Mormon church, other churches as well, just the show. Like you can go like there's some churches I've attended here in Salt Lake and Idaho and Montana, and I can't gather fast enough because the lights are so bright, the music is so loud, the people are yelling at me, the pastors have like their hype men like on the front row where it's like like hyping them. I'm like, this is not for me. But that's like his conversation that he was having in that room, which I still feel is the strongest scene in the movie, including like the sister, not Paxton, the other Barnes's comebacks of just like, you've been sitting in your echo chamber for too long. Let me poke some holes in this logic that you think you're spitting out because you've got it all figured out. I really enjoyed that scene as well. Because it's a conversation that he's explaining that's like, I think people of faith in general need to wrestle with. And I was, like I said, I wasn't with him because he's clearly the villain. He's the bad guy. But you're interested in what he had to say. And when that scene happened in the basement, I was like, I don't care what this guy has to say. I don't. Like anything that he says, and maybe that's on me, like I can tell you very few things other than like his control comment that he makes to Sister Paxton at the end. That's kind of the last thing I remember him saying. Because once that scene happened, I was like, I don't care what this guy has to say. Just as a casual viewer, watch this movie and wanting to understand the logic that he's taking, the lesson that he's teaching, there came a point in his sermon where I just lost interest.
Yeah.
And I will say, playing devil's advocate with myself, is that I've been in church services as well, where I'm hearing sermons, I'm hearing talks, I'm hearing whatever, where I'm with someone until they make a specific comment about something, and then I just lose interest. I'm like, okay, you had me until you said this, and then I'm out. So it's happened in the faith as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember one time having a conversation with a seminary person, an institute, a seminary conversation, and they're talking about the atonement, and they were telling these young people, right, mid-20s, they're like every time you sin, you continue to hurt Christ on the cross. You continue to cause him to bleed in Gethsemane. And I'm like, hold on a second. So his atonement didn't work the first time. If I continue to hurt him because of the choices I make, it didn't work the first time, then is it going to work the second time? Is it even real? You're telling all of these young, stupid people that are trying to find their faith in Christ that they're doomed. that they will continue to cause pain and suffering to Christ for the rest of their lives. It's like, but you also preach that the atonement is an infinite atonement and it happened. Not that it's going to happen. Not that it'll happen after you stop sinning or it will happen every time you sin. Like, it happened. It's complete. It's finished. He did what his Father sent him to do. And it's still not good enough? And I challenged him right on the spot. Because I'm like, that's not true doctrine according to the doctrine that the church presents. Anyways, and I wasn't trying to have a debate, but I also was just going, I find what you're saying is incorrect based on this doctrine of an infinite atonement. And he wasn't really open to having that conversation, and just kind of was dismissive. And I was like, and I will never come to your sermons again, right? Good luck, everybody, right? And not that I'm trying to get into that or not, but like, even the people with the best intentions are leading people astray.
And I think, you brought it up. So I'm going to talk about religion specifically with this story you just shared. I don't think that one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. Now, growing up, I was told when you stab your toe, you don't say, Jesus Christ, my toe hurts, or like, oh my God, I can't believe that Ray Allen just made a 3-pointer. Now the Spurs are going to lose the NBA Finals. That's what I thought it meant. And over the years, I've learned that I don't think that's necessarily true, and maybe trying to justify my own behavior. But I had it explained to me once that using the Lord's name in vain actually means speaking on behalf of God when he has never said anything or clarified the point that you're trying to make. For example, if you continue to sin, you're hurting Jesus over and over and over again. That's not true. That is him speaking for God. I believe that he was taking the Lord's name in vain. 10 years ago, almost to the day.
Interesting. I've never thought
Oh,
of this viewpoint.
I think this is
this resonates very well.
Oh yeah. Like, for example, using the Lord's name in vain. 10 years ago, I worked for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And I had this girl in my foundation that I got really close with. She had episodes where she would go in and out of just, was she going to make it? Was she not? And she made it. And she had turned 8 years old. Her hair started to come back. And she invited me to her baptism, which I was just really excited about. This is like the height of like my BYUI vigor. I was reading the scriptures freaking an hour and a half a day, going to the temple once a week. I was the man. I was like Captain Moroni. Get that joke? Did you get that joke? That was a good joke. It's Captain Moroni.
Moroni, Mr. Reed.
Moroni. Which they did the research. That is a very common misconception that shows that these filmmakers did the research. Yep. Very good caveat in that movie. So I get to go to her baptism, right? And for me, it's, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we're at this moment. I didn't think you would survive a year and a half ago. And I was there, and I was on my way back to college, and I had this black shirt on. Probably know where I'm going with the story. I had a black shirt on and some black khakis, and I go to the baptism all excited. I see this little girl, she gives me a big hug. She's like, thanks for coming. I was like, oh, I miss it. And throughout the service, like, mom comes and sits next to me, and she's like, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And I was like, yeah, what's up? And she's like, well, I just got word from the bishop that you're not allowed to be in the circle. And I was like, oh, can I ask why? Like, what did I do? And she was like, it's your shirt.
That's fucking horseshit.
It is horseshit, bro. And it's like, it's not a real thing. There's nothing in.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, totally with you. If you're listening, go to hell. Because you're speaking on behalf of God, where he don't give two shits what I was wearing. Like,
you're there.
I'm there. And like, in all honesty, I was like, that was my peak Mormonism. That was like my peak where I'm just like, every single rule they're throwing at me, I'm like, boom. What else you got? Oh no, I lost my mic. too pumped up here. Is the mic still there?
I
mic?
hope the mic still works. Here, we'll take just a quick
Mic check. My bad. I'm getting animated.
Yeah, well, that's what that guy should be.
My magnet stuck to my necklace, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Is it still working?
Oh, yep. It's
Still working?
Still working pretty good.
Okay, I can't find the magnet I put on my shirt.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
You hear me okay? I'm sure it will show up when I stand up. I bet it's in my shirt.
Yeah.
Just don't let me forget. Make a note of it. Sorry, listeners.
Take your necklace, though, and put it inside so it's not, like, rubbing against.
Okay. My bad. Better?
Fuck. I just did. I was just like,
Oh,
you
no,
swung,
you
swung,
did it
and
too.
then, shit. Mic check.
Mic check, mic check.
Okay, we're good. Okay. All
Okay.
right.
So, is that it? Is that the? Oh no, it's one of mine.
Okay.
So, for me, like that experience, like he was speaking on behalf of God, where God's never clarified anything about clothing. Like there's things like in like these obscure things that people talk about, like, well, wear a white shirt or wear a suit or whatever. But like as far as like personal worthiness, that was the peak of like, you got more commandments for me? The 10 aren't enough. Give me 12. You got, the prophet has some kind of obscure talk that he gave at BYU, Hawaii back in 1946. Give it to me and I'll read it. I'll just, as far as like my Mormon vessel being just, I was peak. And it hurt so bad. Because like because in this family situation, that family, it was a family of like 6 kids, right? Single mom, because the dad, when he found out his daughter had cancer, bolted.
Also, fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck that guy too. If it wasn't fuck you. No idea why he bolted, but he left his family alone with a single mom while their oldest daughter had cancer. And so, like Make-A-Wish really walked with this family through some really dark and hard times. And to get to this moment where she not only beat cancer, but she's getting baptized in this like really nice religious ceremony, I was just so happy to be invited and happy even more so to participate. And when I got told I couldn't participate by someone I didn't even know who he is. I know his name now. What I won't say on the podcast, but I know who you are now.
Yeah, I don't believe in cancel culture, but for a second I was like, fucking
name
him,
and
then run him to the ground.
Tag him in this.
I don't believe in that shit, but fuck that guy.
Yeah. And so the fact that he told her mom to tell me that I couldn't be in the circle because I was wearing a different colored shirt, I was like, I mean, come on, bro. Like that is...
Please tell me you stood up and you went into the circle.
No, bro, I just obeyed. I was an obedient little, because he had control. Because he had the title that told me that he knew more than I did. Now, going back, this is where I'm making this a full circle story, so we're sticking on point with the podcast. For one, he used the Lord's name in vain because he spoke for God when God has never said anything like that. He used it to insert control. 2, if I could go back in time, for one, I'm a lot bigger now, so I beat his ass. And then after I beat his ass, I would say, you're wrong, and I'm sorry I'm not smart enough to explain why. Because that's exactly what Sister Paxton said to the heretic when he's given her all this spiel, these ways that her religion is wrong, their thinking is wrong, her life is meaningless, and all these different things. And she knows by the way she feels and what she understands God to have taught her about life, about the church, about just human beings in general, is that you're wrong, and I'm sorry that I'm not smart enough to explain why you're wrong. I love that. I love that comeback that she had because it was so pure, it was so innocent, but so profound as you watch her grow up in this movie to say that to this person who's inflicting not only psychological torture, but spiritual torture on you. To come back with that, it's such a pure and profound response, and it was probably my favorite line of the whole movie.
Yeah. Dude, well, that reminded me of a story on when I was a missionary. And I was out in the sticks of Grand Rapids, Minnesota. And it was a little branch. Not a lot of people attended, comparatively to like a congregation in Utah, a ward in Utah. teeny little branch. And there was a family that was members of the church. Some of them, a couple of them were not members, and then the rest were inactive. But this, like, the most incredible family that you could meet, and they were this, like a Samoan or a Tongan family, and so it was all about family, right? Every Monday they would have us over. We would do family home evening. They loved us. They loved the missionaries. The father was this incredible, faithful member, and his wife had died, and he was basically just raising this family by himself in this mixed living situation, all under the same house. And he did everything he could to get his daughters to come with him to church. Never forced them, never made them feel guilty for not, respected their choices, but always like wanted them to be there. One Sunday, they all show up, and they are dressed to the T's, and it was just like, holy shit, they came. How amazing is that? And they look good. And one of the sisters, 17, 16 years old, she came in dress slacks. And she got pulled out of Relief Society and fucking ripped a new one on how she's a bad example. She should be wearing a dress, and how she should be ashamed of her for the way she came to church. And I just wanted to take that lady and fucking shake her until what was in her head. I don't know if there was any
nothing.
brains.
No, there's nothing in that head.
And go, what in the fuck are you doing? Get the fuck out of here. This is someone who is coming to church for the first time.
And probably the best thing that she has.
Yeah, in the absolute best thing that she has. And you are just demeaning her in public. They never came back.
I don't blame them. I wouldn't either.
Why would you?
Why would you? Like, I think the conversation of like this, the church in general, of making it a place where people feel welcome. Like, man, like so many churches across the world. Like, there's one that does it really well. Missio Dei Christian Community, where Brooke goes, does it better than anybody I've ever seen. People can show up there because it's right in the downtown. People have shown up there that obviously are like working the street, that are in the sex industry. People come in there that smell like smoke because they've been smoking, and nobody cares. You get a coffee, you get a donut, you get to sit and listen to a sermon. I'm like, that's what's going to make you come back, because you show up in the best situation, the best clothes you got, in the situation that you're actually in, and you're welcomed, and you're received with love and support and respect. And I would not blame that family one iota if they never went back to church, because why would you? I wouldn't. Yeah. This is a human being. People go where they're going to feel welcomed. Obviously, that lady showed that place was not a welcoming spot for them.
And it's like, and I'm not trying to like defend this woman. I understand that all of us make judgments. I am no stranger to making incredibly false and stupid judgments on others. But also, read the fucking room. All you have to do is read the fucking room. And you'll figure that shit out. Someone was at the door. Is this the dude? One second. Don't think so.
What app is that?
Ring.
Please sponsor us. He's big fan.
Let's see. Let's just check this out. Live view. Probably the lady walking her dog. She does it every day.
Good for her.
Sure, the dog is pretty. Oh, that's live view. That person is the tech. Sure is, lady with her dog.
Good for her.
Good. You take that dog. Anyways, right? Like, just read the room. Common sense, people. Like,
actually, like, I'm assuming that you guys were by their side the whole time.
Oh, yeah, yeah, for
like
sure.
If missionaries are actively engaging with them, obviously they're new.
Yeah, like, I'm like,
Gosh.
if you think, if you, now I'm trying not to be judgmental here.
In what world would Jesus be okay with this being said?
Yeah. Do you think that when you get to the pearly gates and Christ's like, I like Haynes more than Fruit of the Loom? Sorry. I know you started like a whole nonprofit. I know you like saved a bunch of kids, Tyler. But you fucking are wearing Haynes? Come on, dude.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if Jesus would say fuck, but like,
Why not? He flipped tables.
yeah.
Obviously, he gets upset.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's like shit like that, and
Yeah.
and there's just anyways, right? This is the conversation. This is the point of the film. This is the point of the film, to just have this back and forth dialogue of faith, religion, what's real, what's not, what's good, what's bad. It's so passionate. We're passionate about this.
And what did it produce? Right? Like that's the thing is like, because religion, when it's practiced poorly, produces heretics. It produces them. You want to talk about copycats and what can produce heretics? It's bad religion. So like, there was a time in my anti-trafficking work. We were in the Dominican Republic, and we just rescued these two girls that are Haitian girls that were being exploited by this German guy, like in his mid 80s, abusing them in his home and filming the abuse. Like the raiding on that guy's house, we found a bunch of dildos and cameras, and he's just an old 80-year-old prick. And we're looking to find safe housing for them, right? And we meet with this Christian home, a nice place. And we're meeting with them, and they're like, yeah, we got a spot for them. Like, tell us what all these different things, and asking these questions. And he asked a question to my to a guy that was with me. He's like, well, can I ask, like, what religion are you? And he was like, oh, I'm a Jew. And the guy, you could just tell, like, just the Holy Spirit left his body. He was like, this meeting's done. And we're like, okay, what happened? But I didn't get to me. I can't even imagine what he would say to me. But he was like, I can't accept these girls that they're rescued by the hands of a Jew. We have no idea what kind of doctrine you spewed on them, what kind of teachings you thought to them, what kind of proselytation you did for them. He was like, in this home, we are led by the Spirit of God. And in this home, we can't accept girls who were like, we don't know what religion they were. First off, I don't speak French. I have no concept of being like, hey, do you mind me asking? I know we just rescued you from a trafficker. Do you mind me asking what your religious beliefs are?
Because it matters.
Because it matters in that moment. Like, we didn't care. We met these girls 72 hours earlier. We didn't care. First of all, I couldn't even communicate if I did care. And the fact that they wouldn't take those girls in because they were rescued by the hands of a Jew. My last quote to him was, I remember this very.
And was that dude a Christian?
Yeah.
And it's like, hold on a second, buddy.
Yes. I think you'll probably say, what would you say to him?
Was Jesus a Jew? And did he save every fucking buddy?
I wish I would have said that, bro. What I said is like, I'm sure Jesus is really proud of the decision you're making. And I left. I'm like, people like that produce heretics. That's why people like this heretic is like, you preach that you have everything, that you know everything, that you believe everything correctly. Why are you like this? Because you are like this, you produce me. When in reality, like, I know I want to end this on a positive note because it's happened recently. Sam mentioned a story earlier of a family that we rescued from the streets of San Diego. Like, they were homeless. We went down, got them, and brought them to a safe place. We had a meeting with an LDS bishop shortly after with them, not to join their church, not to proselytize, but because the LDS church runs this thing called the Bishop's Storehouse. For those of you guys don't know, the Bishop's Storehouse is basically like, you need food? We've got food for you. This guy, in his broken Spanish, sat down with his family, was like, here's what they have there. Cucumbers, they have meat, they have rice, they have all these different things. So they placed this massive order of food. And the daughter of this family is really obsessed with ranch dressing. And they go through a lot of ranch dressing. And she was like, is there any way I can get 10 bottles of ranch dressing? And he was like, sure. So he typed it in, 10 bottles of ranch dressing in the order.
Good for him.
Yes, he was like, yes, of course. Submitted it. And the questions that she was asking where she was like, well, what do I owe you? What time's your service? And he was like, look, our service is 11 if you want to come. but you don't have to be a member of the church to get this kind of help. Like we do this because obviously you need help. You
Good
come
for that,
Yeah,
dude.
I'm like, that is religion, bro. That is the thing that makes heretics not heretics. It makes people like someone maybe on the fence.
Okay, is that religion or is that faith-centered living?
It's both. I would say it's the religion that Jesus preached in the New Testament, where it's like true religion is faith in action. That is what true religion looks like to me. I don't know. I don't know what verse it is. Don't quote me on that. That might not be a verse. I may be using the Lord's name in vain, but it's people of faith living out what they believe in a way that's grace filled, where it's like, look, I have this thing that you need. It's yours. It's yours. Just like the atonement. I did something for you. You can take it or not, but it's there. And if you don't take it, you're not hurting me. It's just a benefit to you. And I was like, that is what I'm talking about, bro. That guy, that bishop, it was a bishop because it was part of the LDS church. That bishop showed so much Christianity, so much faith, so much
Good living.
good living to this person that needed help. Like, because groceries are expensive, man. Eggs are expensive. Like, things are expensive. And something like ranch dressing they go through a lot of, and he's kind of like, you want 10 of them? Go ahead. We have 20. Go take as many you like. So I'll never forget the image of when we went to the bishop's storehouse for the first time, and this girl was walking out with 10 balls of ranch. Like, that's what she walked out of there with. And I was like, that. And that's why I think this movie is, I didn't expect this to go this direction, but so maybe I was wrong about this movie. Maybe, even though it wasn't my favorite movie, because the ending scene, the middle scene did kind of throw me for a loop, but it makes us converse about maybe what they want us to talk about in reality, where it's like there are aspects of this that are based on control. Like, and I want to go back to what you talked about with control, and then with some of the insight that you have with like the director and hearing what they had to say, to where there are aspects of control religion, no doubt, especially with organized religion. And there's parts of it like what happened with the person with the slacks with my black shirt, where it's like, how is this of God, right? And then there's the response of, you're wrong, and I'm sorry that I'm not smart enough to explain why, and it's because of the fruits of the actions, right, of the heretic, to where a person like that bishop that let this person that's not a member of the church, I don't even know, I didn't know that was allowed. I thought you had to be a baptized member of the church to get access to the bishop's storehouse. It's totally wrong, because they're not members. They have no desire to be members, and they're still getting help. And I'm like, that.
And
Whatever that is, I want more of that.
And unless this has changed in a handbook somewhere, I don't know. Bishops in the LDS Church are not just bishops they are not to stand as bishops just for members of the church. They are to stand as bishops and shepherds for every single living human being within their geographical region that they are assigned, whether a member or not. So the fact that here's this family in my geographical region that need help, and I'm going to help them because that's what I signed up to do, because I want to, not because they believe the same thing I do, they're going to come to church, or they're going to pay us. It's because I believe in Christ. I have signed up to do this role, and I'm going to serve God's children. And then he does. Like, that's his responsibility, and he upheld it extremely well. And good for him, and more bishops need to be like that if they are not.
Yep.
Like, I know bishops that will barter you, and well, are you paying your tithing? Because if you're not paying your tithing, then I don't know that we can help you. And it's like, well, that's not how this works, but okay. See you later, dude. I remember a bishop to my mother, a single mother, raising 3 kids, all on her own, working every odd job she can, including on Sundays, so that she can pay for us to live and survive and have our needs. Going and humbling herself because she did not want to go and ask for help. She didn't want to put that burden on anybody else, found herself in a position that she couldn't rely on anyone, but was told, "You're a member of this church. We're here to help you. Ask for help." She went, and because she had been working on Sundays and not going,
No.
he bartered her on, well, as soon as you start coming to church, the church will start helping you. And she was just like, and she said, and a few other things. And she's like, "I will not barter my faith with you." And she stood up and walked away, and we received no assistance.
The level of vulnerability it takes for someone to ask for help.
And I'll just caveat that really quick. That is that individual, not the church.
Yeah.
I don't want to say, I'm not saying that is the church as a whole. It's not.
No.
That is that individual who is power tripping.
Yep.
And is exercising their control.
Yep. They're in the position. They're. I don't want to call it exploiting the vulnerable, but in this scene, in this story that you just played out, there is one that holds all the cards, and there's one that's probably one of the hardest things that your mom had to do.
Yeah.
Because like as Americans in general, we're not conditioned to ask for help. It's like if you got two hands and two legs, you go work, you go study, you go do your different thing. And sometimes it's just not enough. It's just not enough. And if there's systems in place to ask for help, there's things like that are public assistance for help that are so complicated that it's not even worth sending an application for, like government help specifically. And then there's the help that you're told is accessible to you because you belong to a faith or you belong to a community. And even still, the strength that it takes to go ask for help and then to be received like that. Like I'll tell you a story on the podcast. So
This has got me ripping up my nails.
I got encouraged a few months ago by someone that we both know to go ask the church for help with therapy, right? Because therapy costs, like, I'm not sure, I can't afford therapy. But therapy, I know how life-saving it can be. And so this person, she was like, "You need to go ask the church for help." And I was like, no, not going to happen. Like, and I'll speak just, just being, being frank, like, because we're on camera, might as well be honest. Football season is not my most active time as a member of the church. You combine that with sometimes the crazy travel schedule, attendance has not been super great. And I was telling this person, I was like, "Look, I can't do that." There's going to be like, no way. Like, first off, I'm fine. Two, no, because football season just got over and I haven't been to church in 16 weeks because it was a really good football season. And Josh Allen got the MVP. Excuse. And she was like, and so what she did is because she knows where I live, she put in my address on LDS Tools, fucking found my bishop's number and called him. It was like, "Look, this asshole lives in your ward, lives in your congregation. You may not have seen him for a bit. I know you've met him before." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I know him." She was like, "Well, he needs some help with therapy. So here's his number. Tell him I sent you. He won't say no." And so, sure as shit, guess who texts me? The bishop. The bishop texts me. And he brings me in and he puts an appointment with me and he was very persistent. And so I show up and he was like, "First off, like, I'd love to see you here. Like, you're a benefit to this church. This is where our time is. I'd love to see you here. Second, I want you to give me the number of the therapist you like and we're going to start paying him so you can go see him." And then he walked me out, said, "I love you," and then it was done. And I was like, I was so shook by that experience because it was the exact opposite of what you just described.
Yeah.
And it's how your mom should have been treated. Like, You are welcome here. Love to see you when you can, but we understand your circumstances. Until then, or if then, here is a Bishop Storehouse list. You go shopping for you and those three boys.
Yeah.
But because I had that experience, I was like, I believe a little bit more today because I had people that were people of faith that looked out for me, and it got me to a place, an institution of faith, and I got help that maybe I wasn't looking for, and I was like, I believe just a little bit more because it's producing fruits I can actually buy into.
Yeah. And that's why this is such a hard conversation and a hard topic, right? Because like these experiences don't paint religions as a whole, but they do paint, but they do damage them to the people involved in them, right? Which is why you have, in which I'm guessing is why they had the conversation about fast food in Heretic, and they go, well, what's your favorite fast food? And they're naming all of these, right? And then Taco Bell gets brought up, and she's like, well, we don't talk about Taco Bell because she had a bad experience. She did at Taco Bell, right? So Taco Bell for her, off the list. There's going to be millions of people that had nothing but fantastic experiences at Taco Bell,
Me included.
right? And that's why it's like hard to like judge an entire religion off of the soldier, or it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to judge an army based off of individual soldiers as a collective whole, if that makes sense, right? Um, it's just, and it would be unwise to do so because that's an individual experience. However, it's still unfortunate, and it still doesn't take away the damage or the hurt that it does to those people. But that's where I feel like a lot of religions fall short, is they get so lost in the technical that they forget the reason why they're doing it in the first place. Like, strip away the fat. Like, strip away all the other shit. And like, if you want to read the Bible and go from the Bible, like the two great commandments, and then everything else falls underneath those. And what are they? Love God with all thy heart, mind, and soul, and then love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, my viewpoint and argument on that is love is the number one thing that's important to me. Love me, love thyself, love thy neighbor as thyself. And my opinion is, I think God is saying, love me, love yourself, and then love your neighbor. Because if you cannot love your neighbor as you love yourself, because you don't love yourself, you cannot love your neighbor. Same in a relationship. If you cannot love yourself, you cannot truly love your partner. And then it's only going to get rough from there, because there's all of these false expectations, there's all of these false scenarios that you think exist, or that someone else is going to be responsible for your happiness. No, like, it's you and God, and that's it. And then from there, expand to others, right? That's my opinion on the fact. But people get so lost in, well, it's a black shirt, not a white shirt, so priesthood's not going to work today, soldier.
Priest is a little bit less because of the black.
Judas fucking priest.
It's so dumb. And it goes into, like, to piggyback off what you said, two comments. One is lyrics from a rock song. I think you're spot on. I never even thought of it that way, and I think this rock band described it perfectly, to where they're going through depression, self-loathing, and they say, I wouldn't speak to a stranger the way I speak to myself. I'm like, man, that's a fucking profound piece of lyrics. I think it goes right into what you're saying. You cannot love others, you don't love yourself. Two is, this comes from Daredevil, so I'm going to plug Daredevil again.
Okay.
There's a quote in there when it talks about bad religion, because the whole thesis around Daredevil was that he is a devout Catholic who dressed up as the devil at night. And he talks about what bad religion does to people in general. And he goes back to the story of the Good Samaritan. And he was like, when you practice bad religion, you are not the people that pass the wounded person by. You are not the Good Samaritan. You're not the keeper of the inn. Who you are is the person who inflicted the pain that caused the Good Samaritan to begin with. You are the person that descended on the traveler, caused him harm, hurt him to the point that he had to have someone to save him. That is what bad religion does. You are not a hero. You become the villain in that story, the one who inflicts the pain. And I think he's right. And I think like it'd be interesting to have, and we'll never get this because it's A24, but a prequel of Hugh Grant's character, where it's like, how did you
Get to where you
get
are.
to where you are? Because his story, like, you don't get to be that psychotic and have religion as like that focal point unless you go through a hell of a lot of religious trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have more insights into the making of this movie than most people, I think, listening to this, because you actually got to sit down with the directors.
It was. I mean, all the people in the theater that signed up, like it wasn't a table with you and me.
It wasn't in Megaplex. It's definitely an AMC,
No,
right?
sir. No, sir. It
Okay.
wasn't. No, it was. It was in Salt Lake City, and I forget actually where it was, but it was part of
One of those theaters.
one of the. Yeah, it was
Okay.
like a film club thing. But yeah, I mean, it was just interesting, fascinating, because at the very end of the day, right, they are bringing up a hard conversation to talk about. They're exploring it. They're asking all sorts of different questions from different perspectives. And they are then presenting you without an answer, because you have to figure this shit out on yourself, right? At the end of the movie, Sister Paxton alive or dead? Was that butterfly real or not? Like, what happened? Well, they're not going to tell you. You got to come to your own conclusion, right? But it's left to either one. She could be dead. She could be living. But who knows? I mean, did the butterfly land at the tip of her finger? No, it didn't. It landed on her knuckle. And she was very specific about that. She was like, well, I would tell people if I were dead, very specifically, I would be a little butterfly and I would land right at the tip of their finger to let them know that I'm there. Well, was that butterfly right there? Nope. But was there a butterfly? And did it land on her hand? Sure did. What's real, what's not, right? So they are presenting a conversation, or they're presenting an idea. The idea is religion. They're asking hard questions and engaging in conversation from every viewpoint possible. And then you're left with your own self to figure out what's happening. And I think that is the battle and the crucible of doubt, is everybody has to have their own personal experience with their belief in a higher power. And if that higher power is running and is involved in their life and involved in the orchestration of everything around us. And is that thing good? Is that thing bad? Is it leading us somewhere? Did we come from somewhere? Is it helping us understand why we're here in the first place? But that's such a personal journey that regardless of who you are, you're going to have good and positive and bad and negative experiences in whatever thing you're exploring, in an organization, in a faith, in a belief system, whatever it is. You're going to have people that are going to show up and go, those slacks aren't good enough. How could you show your faith at church? And you're going to have someone that goes, I'm so glad you're here. I don't care that you're covered in blood. You're wearing no clothing.
You smell like smoke.
You smell like smoke.
Wearing a black shirt.
You're filthy. Like, I'm going to hug you and hold you until you can just let your shoulders down and take a breath. Right? So that's the whole idea of this film, is they're presenting a conversation on religion, which I think they did a great job. I really related to it because I'm a member. I grew up a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I've had this back and forth, in and out journey throughout my life. And now I'm kind of on a stage where I'm like, I am finding my own way with God in my own terms, in the terms that God or whatever God is uh, has in store for me and wants me to go. I'm getting rid of all of these technicalities and all of these scaffolding around this idea. And I'm going, fuck that. That's all noise. I want to know for me if there's something out there, what it is, and if there's a real relationship to me with it. And I believe there is. And a lot of things in my life has shifted and changed around that. But my central source is, my central belief system is now is I believe in myself. I exist, and I only know what I can experience and can feel and can think, whether it's logical or illogical. I can only know me. I believe that there's another being and source out there. I'm going to define it by calling it God. And God has an interest in me, regardless of if I have an interest in him or her or not. And that being is involved in my day-to-day, that there is some sort of plan, that I am a part of that, and that I am going somewhere with it for the better. And I want to be an enjoyable part to other people on their own journey as well. But it's interesting because the last few years have been a lot of back and forth in like my faith and what I thought I believed in and how I thought God was or is or existed. And actually, Heretic for me, and like I said, I think Heretic is very neutral. I don't believe Heretic is telling you that religion is good or bad, or that there is or isn't a God. It's just presenting a conversation to you. But for me, it was interesting because I felt like I was seen and heard in a lot of ways, and then I had answers to my questions that I didn't feel like I had answers to in the past. And I go, no, I am going to be moving this way now for me because I do feel like this. So, just an interesting journey, and I still don't know exactly like what that looks like. But I do think it's been good because it's caused me to honestly look at it authentically and not care who or what other people think about my stance on anything, because that's me and my journey, and I don't give a shit if you like it or not. Like, I'm going to be a good human being, and whatever good is, I don't know, but I'm going to do my best at just functioning in a society that has normal good things. Again, who knows, define what those are. I don't know. But I'm going to do what feels good in my heart that doesn't hurt or harm anyone else. Of course, I'm going to say fuck you to that guy or whatever, right? And then I'll work that shit out later. But I just feel like this film was good for me because it was an open conversation that I've had with myself for a long time that just felt like it was now a public conversation.
I think that was the best type of media. I think is when you feel seen, you feel heard, and Heretic, I would say it's probably the safest space you could be in if you're looking to have that conversation with yourself. Because if you're in the pro-religion camp, all you hear is religion, good, good, good. Anyone who's not a believer is bad, 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 bad. And then outside, the exact opposite, where it's like if you believe in religion, you're stupid, you're arrogant, you're bigoted, whatever. It's like, how can I have some time to think for myself or no? Heretic gives you the space to do that. And I really just one of them, and I've heard this comment from two atheists as I've looked to do research and find out people that have seen Heretic, and both of them really fixate on that last scene when it comes to prayer, where the Heretic guy is freaking out. He's about getting ready to die, and Sister Barnes. Is that the one? She's at peace with what's about to happen. And one of my atheist friends who I talked
Sister
to,
Paxton.
Sister Paxton. One of my atheist buddies who was in my house the other day, he was like, that's what I think faith represents for a lot of my family who are still believers. Him referring to his family. Is that they have peace of what's going to happen after this life. And it gave that person that. And I'm glad it gave her that in that moment. And this other guy I was listening to, who's also an atheist on this podcast, he talked about that scene where, we've talked a lot on this podcast, this show, about examples of religion that are bad and then some that are good in ways that people have thought outside of themselves and made someone else's burden a little bit easier, loved themselves, loved others, loved God. And so her last comment on prayer, where she was like, I've read the studies on prayer. I know that statistically it doesn't work, that it's not like this magic gumball machine that I can pray all I want. It still might not stop global warming or whatever, might not cause the rain to come. But it gets me to think about someone else that's not me for a couple minutes a day. For me, that's beneficial. And like that scene, it was beautiful for me watching. I was like, oh, that's cool. My prayers need to be a little more, less centered on myself and centered on others. And then from hearing the perspective of two people that at this point are unbelievers, to have them be like, them is, and they're two people that were one point inside the church and are out, and have no interest in belief at all. So their perspective was really valuable to me, as far as like, that's what they want to see more from religion, is people thinking outside of themselves. And so I pried a little bit on one guy. I was like, well, why? Tell me why. Tell me why you think that way. And he was like, the world we live in is so self-centered. Your sexual needs need to be fulfilled. Yours. They're the most important thing. Politically, let's get rid of all political or all government services, to where every man fend for himself, everybody in the private sector to make your money and do your different thing. Private properties, the rights of you and you alone, the things that are most important. The society we live in as a whole is very much like, what is Tyler's needs and how do I fulfill those? Because I am what makes this world go round. And he's like him hearing the sister missionary say that prayer allows her to think about outside of herself for a couple minutes a day was refreshing to them. And I was like, interesting. So I thought a lot about that. And I think when you bring it down to like back what you said earlier, love God, love yourself, love others. That's what people, I'm including as well, the heretic himself, wants to see more from people, organized religion, private believers, whatever, even people that like you that have like your own unique space in it, where it's like, no, I'm making my own space. This is my space. To do it, I've seen this 1,000 times with you, where it's like when there's a chance for Sam to step up for somebody else, he does it. And I think that's what unbelievers, heretics, unbelievers, what do you want to call them, want to see more from people of faith, is that they use that faith and think about others, even if it's through prayer at the end of your life, to just think about someone else for a couple minutes a day.
Yeah. Even listening to that, I kind of just had an epiphany of the conclusion to Mr. Reed is religion is nothing but control. And it is an illusion of control. And it wants to control you so that you become this little puppet in its little maze. And I think what set Sister Paxton free at last in her moment of finding peace was when she let go of control. She no longer was trying to control what happened to her next. She was no longer trying to control whether she was getting in or out of that place alive, what Mr. Reed was or wasn't going to do with her. She was just, I have decided to let go of what happens next. I am no longer going to have control or try to have control over this situation, and I'm going to choose to be kind because that's who I am and that's what I want to do. And I'm going to pray for you and I'm going to pray for me because that makes sense and that makes me feel good. And it, in my view, is not hurting you, but it's helping you. And it's not hurting me, but it's helping me. and I'm just giving up control of what happens next. And I think that moment is what set her free, and she was in peace. She, in my opinion, died. She's dead.
Yep, they're dead.
In peace, right? Because she gave up control. And I do believe a lot of religion is all about control. I absolutely do. I think, again, I'm not trying to be negative on the LDS Church, or I'm not trying to be anti. I think there is a massive amount of control that the LDS Church has and does. There's a lot of things that they do under the surface that nobody knows about, that they hide and they bury, just like any other religion. I'm not trying to discredit people's own spiritual experiences, or even my own that I've had. But I do think a huge part of that is control. And if they can keep you and your family, and then your family's family, and your family's family's friends, it's a church that will never go away. Now, on a positive note, for everyone that's like, well, the church is bad, because, and I'm specifically talking about this church because this is
It's our experience.
it's our experience, and it's the viewpoint of these people in the film, these Mormon missionaries. But my buddy sent me this thing, and it was a screenshot from this guy's Twitter. I don't know who this is, but on Twitter, his name is Taylor G. Petrie. Seems like a nice guy. He says, apologies for not writing up a more formal review to publish it in some online paper or magazine, but I just got home and I have to say something right now. I'm going to be thinking about Heretic movie for a long time. And then he goes, as a scholar of religion and a Latter-day Saint, I consider that this is perhaps the greatest LDS story ever told, and a crucial commentary on faith and doubt, religion and secularism, power and freedom. Huge spoilers below. First, let me say that we are seeing too much commentary on what it gets right or gets wrong about Mormonism or missionaries or whatever, which is a lot what we've been talking about, right? Others have focused on the early, uninformed outrage that this was going to spark violence against missionaries, which we also talked about. These missed the point.
Yep.
Honestly, I'm shocked at how none of the published reviews that I have read so far have understood the central symbol in the film at all. I'll get straight to the point. Only an endowed Latter-day Saint can understand this film truly. It is written for them, and many missed it. The entire film is an inversion of the LDS endowment ceremony. The home is the anti-temple. The movement from room to room, specific words and phrases, the instructions at the doors, the visual aids, the altar, the location of the cuts the sister missionaries receive. Rather than rising toward the celestial kingdom, the anti-temple's journey is a descent into the underworld. They are unsaved as they descend. Even the LDS garment plays a role. In fact, calling it magic underwear is the very thing which does bring salvation. If you don't know the temple symbolism, you cannot fully understand the film's message. Yes, it is a secular critique of religion, sometimes quite powerful and sometimes quite silly, but it does so from a place so deeply embedded in Mormonism that is not just a superficial trotting out of embarrassing facts or logistical problems, but one that turns its symbolic universe upside down, painfully so. A digression before I get back to my point, it has long been an annoyance of mine that so much intellectual and financial capital was invested in LDS evangelical dialogues in early decades, where LDS tries to prove they were Christians and took very serious debates about faith and works, Christology, biblical authority, etc. These seemed a profound waste of time to me, who sought different and more challenging conversation partners to deal with more weighty philosophical questions. Such approaches would be less worried about proving the myths and more invested in making the world better. Some of the LDS intellectual class have begun to take more seriously secularism, not as an enemy, but as a real conversation partner, and begun a post-secular Mormonism. Where did I leave off? Oh, such a conversation must join in the examination of power that this film invites. Perhaps such a venture is also a dead end, but at least it might have something to say to the anti-temple of secular religion other than violence. Otherwise, we are all lost. Anyways, I just think it's a fascinating viewpoint from someone who I can't verify this. I don't know who they are, but they say they're a scholar and an active member of the LDS Church, and they are saying this is the most accurate depiction of the most intimate practices of the LDS faith. Just look at it, and if you don't see it the first time, go back, because what do you do as an active member of the church? When you go to the temple, you go back, you go back, you go back, right? And the whole point of this is it's a conversation, and you can't just look at it once and then have all the answers, right? This conversation is something you have to revisit and revisit and revisit. It's not saying it's good, it's not saying it's bad, it's just presenting this information to you in the way it's packaged, and then you get to decide for yourself, is this right or wrong? Do I agree or not agree? And am I supportive or not? And I think at the end of the day, that's all that we can do in our own journeys of faith and understanding and whatever, whether it's the LDS faith, Catholicism, Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, whatever.
After hearing that review, and like I said, this was not my favorite movie in the world. I did have some issues with it. But after listening to that and thinking about my own experience, I'm actually glad they used the LDS Church as a vessel to tell this story, because it helped me as an LDS person understand it better. Like, I actually feel bad for people that maybe aren't members of the church or Catholic or Christian or whatever, they're watching this without the intimate knowledge to be like, well, I want to have a similar conversation about my own faith. Like, we should feel lucky. We should feel lucky, because it was. The missionaries were portrayed as humans, not as robots and not as morons, as they're so often portrayed. The things that were being discussed, very profound. And I actually feel like A24, if you're listening, sponsor us. We'll provide free advertising.
I also want to shoot one of your films.
The next one, Heretic 2. But
Heretics.
Heretics with like a Greek Z. But like, I feel lucky that it was like the faith that we know so much about, because it was part of our story, that they use it to tell this. That they use it to tell the story because it's more intimate to us. It makes us feel more seen. It makes us ask questions that maybe we are too afraid to ask of ourselves, but because it was a good story and an outlet to a safe space, we're like, okay, let's think, let's talk, let's come to our own conclusions. Let's not have us at the end be like, your faith is wrong, your faith sucks, or like, you see, the Mormons won in the end, it's all good, you guys go forth with faith. It's like, I just feel like, after listening to that, I just feel lucky. I feel lucky that the faith that I belong to was the central faith that was discussed in this, because if it was a discussion, which it could have been, about the Catholic Church or the Jehovah's Witnesses, I wouldn't have resonated so much, and I probably wouldn't have not have thought as deeply, or honestly, even cared to do a podcast about it. It would have been a movie that's like, yeah, I watched it last night, and that's it. But because it resonated so much, it's podcast worthy.
Podcast worthy. And I'll just conclude with, I'm a fucking white guy with podcast equipment.
Yep.
I don't know shit. So
Get over it.
take what you want, Love or hate my thoughts on this.
But definitely watch it.
Definitely watch it.
Definitely watch
You
it.
should. Megaplex theaters, do better. Be better.
Because it's fine to hate this. If you watched it and you were like, that is anti-Mormon, it promotes violence against sister missionaries, it promotes violence against women, don't watch it. That's fine, but watch it first. Watch it first, digest it, think about it, and if that's the conclusion you come to, great. But at least you put in the effort to be like, okay, this thing that I'm going to have an opinion about, I'm going to consume it first, and then I'm going to spit it out to you what I think. But to not even watch it, to write a review, it's like, don't go support this movie. I won't be supporting this movie because it promotes anti-Mormonism and violence against sister missionaries. Watch it first. Watch it first.
It's hypocritical in the fact that these are the very people that go, you need to read the Book of Mormon and you need to find out for yourself if it's true or not. But only you can do that if you read it and you study it and you pray about it. It's like, well, that applies to everything else.
Do the same thing for Heretic. Watch it first. Think about what it says. And if you come to the conclusion that it's not for you, great. Great. I watched it. It's not my favorite movie of all time, but I had a great discussion about it. I thought a lot about it. It's stuck with me since. I'm definitely going to see Wartime, the next A24 movie that's coming out, because if it produces
Warfare.
If it produces the same thought-provoking impact that the last two have had, I'll see another one. We gotta go see it.
That's why I love films. They are a means to have hard conversations and just explore uncharted territory or challenge your territory, challenge your thoughts, you know? So,
Yeah, just please go to the movies, guys. Like, please go. Like, the last movie that we reviewed as of the release, as we were recording this podcast, was Mickey 17, and it is bombing at the box office. It's not doing well. People are having conversations of like, this would have been so much better if they would have just dumped it on Netflix. So many more people would have seen this by now. And they're probably right. But it's something you have to experience in the theater, man. Don't let this experience die. Going to the theater is one of my favorite things. There's certain movies you just have to see on a big screen. I wish I would have seen this on the big screen because I imagine that it would have been
great.
awesome. I'm glad it's on in streaming. I'm glad it was on there, but come on, guys, please go to the theater.
also don't judge a story based on a commercialized plan for it. Right? It didn't make any money. That means it's not good. No, that's not true. It just means it didn't necessarily have the hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing that your Captain America Brave New World had towards it. So less people knew about it, less people saw it. People that did see it liked it. People that did see it didn't like it. Just like any other movie.
But they went and saw it.
But they went and saw it. So
Cool, man. Well, bring us home.
Well, shit. I mean, that went in a direction a little different than I thought. And we talked about the movie, but we also didn't really talk about the movie, which is kind of interesting. Because I had all of these thoughts about the plot events and X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. Even more thoughts about just how it relates to the endowment in a way that won't be offensive or freak people out or break the rules behind it, but just that are interesting. But I think it went in a direction that the filmmakers intended it to go. Not to talk about the movie, but to talk about religion.
Yeah. And to create a safe space to do so.
Yeah. So, in your practicing religion, regardless of what religion you practice, I think one of the most important things, in my opinion, that should be in every single one is love. And don't forget to tell someone that you love them.
Boom.